The good news is that we know what to do, and we have the financial and technological tools to get the job done. It is time for nations to come together for implementation. It is time for international solidarity across the board. Humanity has a choice: cooperate or perish.
Hello, and welcome to the COP27 Dialogues. Over the last 2 weeks, the world's eyes have been on Sharm el-Sheikh in Egypt. Stakeholders from heads of state and policymakers to climate activists, civil society, and the private sector have come together for the UN climate conference COP27, Africa's COP. Energy challenges and solutions have been high on the agenda as leaders discuss how to accelerate a just, inclusive, and equitable energy transition to address the climate crisis. The Secretary General has called the achievement of Sustainable Development Goal 7 on energy the single most important solution to avert climate catastrophe, and noted that we have a double imperative: to end energy poverty and limit climate change. Today's COP27 dialogue will focus on just solutions to achieving this, in particular around renewable energy. My name is Nanette Braun. I'm the Chief of Communication Campaigns here at the United Nations. And thank you very much, Deputy Secretary General Amina Mohammed, for convening us today.
Thank you for having us all.
And here to discuss how to accelerate the transition to clean energy as the pathway to a healthy, sustainable planet today and for generations to come are three leaders spearheading green solutions. We have Damilola Ogunbiyi, CEO and UN Special Representative of the UN Secretary General for Sustainable Energy for All and co-chair of UN Energy. Welcome, Damilola. Akufuna Muyunda is an award-winning climate leader and co-founder of Young Volunteers for Environment Zambia. A warm welcome to you as well, Akufuna. And finally, Kate Hampton, the CEO of the Children's Investment Fund Foundation. Thank you to all of you for being with us today. Deputy Secretary General, we are coming off the second week of COP. Tuesday was Energy Day. Given renewable energy's game-changing potential, what do you want people to know about a just and green transition?
Thank you very much, and thank you to our colleagues for joining us. It's great to see you all. I think probably four things. The first thing is that the just in a just transition must be unpacked, and it must be focused on the most vulnerable people, countries, and we need to see that those that have had least to do with the climate crisis are up front and center when we're looking at our investments. So really unpack the just for women, for those that are suffering this most. The second is that development is a right. And so countries who are looking at the just transition really do need to have the investments for that development. And often they are coming from behind and exacerbated further by the climate crisis. So really important that we have the resources that are promised in Paris and beyond. The energy goal is an SDG goal. So let's look at the SDGs holistically and have a whole of government, a whole of society response to development. And to see that in some of these transitions, energy will be critical. So if we talk about the food systems, or we speak to the digital transformation, or the education transformation, all of these need energy. And that really sort of underscores the just part of it. The third, I think, will be for us the partnerships that are needed for this, for innovation, for the momentum that's needed to put the pressure on governments, north and south, because in the north we have to keep the promises, but in the south the enabling environment, and having to make the choices in that transition to go green. And green, demystify the green piece. It has to be also fair. Countries are coming from a place where they're least developed, they're least industrialized, and they will need an energy transition that responds to that. I think we have then partnerships that need to be in place for the supply chains. It's when we want to see a green transition, those supply chains must be made available to developing countries, and we have to see the base of production of much of this move from, as we saw with the vaccines, a one-stop shop. We need to get that on the continent, whether it is Latin America, it's Asia, it's Africa, production itself needs to be decentralized. Last, I think that, you know, we're coming into the second week, and let's actually talk about the things that are happening. So on the just transitions out of coal, the JETPs, we see in Bali already some really good lifting in terms of resources to try to pull them out of coal with the 20 billion commitment by richer countries. We want to see more concessional funding. This is why the SG has the pact that he would like to see between emerging economies and developed countries as well.
I'm calling for a historic pact between developed and developing economies, and especially developed and emerging economies, a climate solidarity pact. A pact in which all countries make an extra effort to reduce emissions this decade in line with 1.5-degree goal. A pact in which wealthier countries and international financial institutions provide financial and technical assistance to help emerging economies speed their own renewable energy transition. A pact that will provide universal, affordable, sustainable energy for all. A pact in which developed and emerging economies unite around a common strategy and combine capacities and resources for the benefit of humankind.
Damilola, I would like to turn to you and ask you this. Energy is at the heart of the climate challenge, and renewable energy is not only key to the solution, but also what will help unlock the Sustainable Development Goals. So in addition to avoiding the climate catastrophe, what is the business case really for accelerating the just transition? Or in other words, what are the economic and social benefits?
Rifa, thank you for having me. I agree with everything DSG has said. In terms of the social benefits, it's obviously a social return on investment by better health services, better education, and just, you know, a healthier population to get working. We also know clearly that if you give a woman sustainable renewable energy for her business, she can be 59% more profitable in terms of our earnings. So I don't think there's much to say about, just the key role renewable energy really plays in the energy transition. I think what is now happening is that a lot of countries in the developing countries want to shift to renewables. We see a lot more offtake on, what is the energy transition pathways. And for us, what we have to do is show them exactly how to get there. We're asking a lot of these countries. It's kind of a whole of society change. It's not just the renewables for their power systems. It's renewables for their transportation system, for their health system, for the agricultural system, and how that can actually come in terms of a just and equitable energy transition. So what we noticed and what we saw in Sharm el-Sheikh is that real encouragement that developing countries, even countries that are not coal dependent, and saying, yes, we want to transition. We want to get to a pathway of net zero, of which renewables are at the heart of it. So that was really great and really, really encouraging. For countries to say that. Some countries are saying that pathway might take us 2060, might take us 2065, but we're determined. But we can't leave out the development piece. So there's a piece of work that we have to do now, is to make sure that climate development and energy go hand in hand. You can't do one or the other, but you can do it in a clean way, focusing on renewables. Another part of the equation that was really exciting was they are actually already developing their energy transition plans. We saw the Ghanaian president launch their energy transition framework. What they didn't have was an investable-based document, which is what we're trying to do at the UN, is support countries that don't have JETPs in place and say, how are they going to transition? Because they're just as important as, coal countries as well. But one of the things that was a bit disheartening was the response in terms of climate financing. It just wasn't there. And it's very, very hard when we're pushing countries to go clean. We now have the momentum of countries not wanting to be left behind, knowing the renewables is the answer, but there's just no funding on the other side. So again, very encouraged with Bali and Indonesia, but we do have to think about a package of support for countries that are high risk as well, but they are not dependent on coal.
Thank you so much, Damilola. And Akufuna, more countries and communities are embracing the use of renewable energy, not only to power their homes and schools, hospitals and workplaces, but also as a viable option for employment and business opportunities. How can we ensure that people have the right skills and knowledge to be prepared for the green transition and that no one is left behind?
Yeah, the most important thing we need to consider is oftentimes when we talk about transition to renewable energies, we only think about technology and innovation. We forget that as we transition, people also need to transition in terms of knowledge and skills. Do the people have the right skills that are required to be able to, motivate this transition across all levels? And when I'm talking about across all levels, I'm thinking about my grandmother in the village. If I'm going there to say, yes, no more fossil fuels, this is the technology that we have brought, which is a renewable energy technology, does she have the user knowledge of that product? Does she even understand why we need to transition? I'm thinking about my daughter. Does she have the knowledge that is required to know why this is a necessary subject to talk about? So if we are to really maximize the opportunity that comes with the just transition from fossil fuels to renewable energy, we need to also consider the people capacity across all levels. And in particular sense, this is an opportunity. It's an opportunity in the context that we are going to create even more business opportunities for the people. Therefore, we need to invest in the knowledge industry around how we can build green businesses as an opportunity for the people, so that we can be able to create even green jobs for the people, especially the young people. So when we are talking about the just transition, it is very much important, and this is the right time to actually begin to consider opportunities to enhance learning around renewable energy so that we can also be able to prepare ourselves. How am I going to sustain myself in terms of business in the new world, the world of renewable energies? And how am I going to create jobs in the new world, the world of renewable energies? So those skills and required capacity is a necessity that we need to prioritize as we transition to renewable energies.
Thanks, Akufuna. And let me also ask you this. I mean, the fossil fuel industry has obviously been a big employer. So how can we ensure that people who were previously working in the fossil fuel industry are also supported to make the transition?
That's a very important question. It's a very important question because the people have families, they have responsibilities, and actually there's anxiety that comes with this transition as well. So the mental well-being of the people is an issue that should put on the table, and we must be able to actually be able to identify the risks associated with the transition itself to renewable energies. What are the risks? The risk is people will lose jobs, but what is the opportunity that we have? So the opportunity we have is there are actually more jobs that will be created from renewable energy technologies and innovation than it is from fossil fuels. Because there is diversity in renewable energies, actually there's opportunity in the context that we'll need new skills, we'll need new businesses, and that means more jobs being created, and that means more professions being created. People have to go to school to learn technology around renewable energies and models around it. And by so doing, they will have something to do. And therefore, we'll also be able to prepare the people that are already working currently in the fossil fuel industry by already reaching out to them to understand the nature of their current jobs and how ready they are to move into the new world. It won't happen overnight. It can't happen overnight, which is why we are running out of time, and the right time is now.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Akufuna. And Kate, it's a great segue because it is clear that climate action needs all parts of society to come together. And more often than not, people turn to youth as a source of hope, but also hope that we can make the necessary changes to leave them a world they can thrive in. But how can we ensure the meaningful engagement of young people to accelerate the transition? And why is this so important?
Thank you. I mean, COP27 has done more for youth, I think, than any previous COP in terms of their participation. The Secretary General had an in-depth meeting with a number of youth delegates. We've had the first ever youth-led dialogue, which was mandated by the Glasgow Pact. Egypt had the first youth envoy appointed by the presidency. And we've also had, and CIFF was really pleased to co-fund this with Save the Children and UNICEF, the first ever Children and Youth Pavilion, which was not just a space for young people, but several heads of state showed up. Foreign ministers, some of the high-level champions, Alok Sharma, the COP26 president, the foreign minister of Egypt, and some of the elders as well, Zaid Rad and Mary Robinson. So we've had really interesting informal dialogues as well as the formal intergenerational dialogues. And then a number of stakeholders as well. So the C40 group of mayors, for example, has been committed to engaging youth as part of their climate planning and preparation. So we are seeing more youth participation than ever before. However, we need to go a lot further if we want really meaningful youth participation, because it has to happen at every level of society, not just big international gatherings. And people often refer, as you did, to young people as a source of hope, but we need to think beyond hope into giving them a real opportunity and sense of agency. They will be leading the change. It's interesting that half of millennials don't want to work in oil and gas, and the younger you get, the less they do. So between 16 and 19-year-olds, 62% don't want to work in oil and gas. You're seeing more and more young people at the vanguard of the decentralized energy revolution. The next energy system is going to be much, much closer to people and to communities, less centralized, more community-owned, and that will give lots of opportunities for young people. And I very much agree with Akufuna when he says that we need to make sure that our young people are given all the skills and tools that they need to actively not just participate in the green transition, but lead it. And so I was very excited to hear the range of comments that we've had today. What we need to do now is decide, are we going to subsidize our ongoing fossil fuel dependency in the midst of this energy crisis, or are we going to use those resources, which are so precious, to actually build for the future? And again, you know, if young people aren't at the table, governments, businesses, societies will tend to take very short-term decisions, which mean throwing money at the old system, as opposed to thinking about transitioning to the new system. So it's crucial that young people have a sense of agency and are empowered to drive the clean energy transition.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Kate. And DSG, talking about resources, the enormous potential of women as really half of humanity was already alluded to. Yet a recent analysis has found that women make up less than 34% of the negotiating teams at COP27, even though they are not only so much part of the solution, but also often bear a higher burden from climate change. So what can we do to accelerate gender equality as well as we look at the transition to renewable energy?
Yeah, thank you. You know, first and foremost, just anything that happens on the climate agenda, if it doesn't happen within the context of the push to get the SDGs, women will be left behind. And the agenda of 2030 is about leaving no one behind. And as you said, no bird flies on half a wing. And this is what's happening right now. Our ambitions will never be met. Having said that, I think that, you know, when I looked at COP, I was horrified at the leaders' picture because there just were no women. But thereafter, I think we forgot the promise for 50-50 on panels. And I have, you know, both the same concerns that we walk into an adaptation meeting and the picture you have is all men, and it's all old men. So we are not only just missing women, we're missing young people. And where we saw and have seen women in COP, it has been at women's gatherings on women's issues or youth and youth issues. And what we need to see is men and women in the same room and women in those leadership positions, in negotiating positions, in the positions where they can take those decisions. And not just working in the back room, but also in the front room. And this has to change. And I think lessons from COP27 need to be seen as translated into COP28, which is going to be the stock take. What are we going to say to the world then? It's clear that with women's leadership, we will move streets ahead. The Bridgetown Initiative is one where, quite frankly, it's 2 women co-convening and bringing more women to the table that have taken serious decisions. Our Prime Minister, Mia Mottley, a global leader from the South, but also having the United Nations and myself be able to pull people together. One of the incredible outcomes was Kate, another woman leader, who is able to say, yes, we need impartial voices, strong ones, amplified in civil society, and then gather her colleagues to say, this is what we're doing in multi-year funding to ensure that that voice can be amplified. So it's in every way that we can find women at the helm of affairs, taking those decisions, pushing forward. I think that's what we have to support. The just transitions are going to prove, I think, much more inclusive if we can find younger folk that are in those just transitions and the implementation, and that they are community-generated solutions to this. And that, you know, when we have women's leadership, as we do with Damilola on the Sustainable Energy for All, how do we bring all of that into the fore as we design the deals that need to be had? So it's not just the advocacy, it's also be in the deal room, it's be in the implementation of that deal, and determine context by context, what are my needs, and not be spoon-fed, not be prescribed. And that can only come from women being at the helm of affairs.
Thank you so much for that, Deputy Secretary General. And I would like to thank all of you for sharing your thoughts on this panel. We have a lot of work to do, but hopefully we are closer to the goal than we were yesterday. And before we go 2 weeks into COP and the negotiations, I would like to ask all of you, what is the one-word takeaway on renewables from COP27? Damilola, what is your one-word takeaway?
The one word has to be disruption. We have to do something disruptive to really make a difference and leave no one behind.
Thank you so much, Damilola. And Akufuna?
Yeah, and my take-home is, in every crisis lies an opportunity. Fossil fuels are a crisis, and the opportunity is in renewable energy. The only thing that requires to be done now is to work in unity and to act now and leave no one behind. Thank you.
Thank you, Akufuna. And Kate, do you have a one-word takeaway from COP27?
For me, it's accelerate, because we have run out of time, and there are great examples like Namibia and Denmark, which have steamed ahead, and they're now insulating themselves from the volatility associated with fossil dependency. Accelerate will be good for everyone. Youth keep asking for it. We're running out of time. Let's just move faster.
Thank you, Kate. And Amina Mohammed, Deputy Secretary General, you have the last word.
Money. And lots of it, and urgently, and at scale. And that in itself is keep the promise of Paris.
Thank you so much for that as well. And thank you everyone for joining us today. And you can find more information in the link on how you can act now to take climate action.